And it will start to kind of give you some secrets as to how to make your music feel full without adding a ton of effects. Nothing wrong with effects, as we just went through in the previous tip, but the volume aspect of things can create a better collage of sound, if you will. All right, I spent enough time on that. Let's move on to the last thing, EQ. EQ is your friend. If you know how to EQ each and every single instrument, how to EQ a sub kick, how to EQ a snare so that it snaps or that it punches through, or your hi-hats or your guitars to make them shimmer, or whatever it may be, spend some time on looking at how people EQ various instruments or tracks within their mix. If you just go to, let's say, to your master area and just crank up the bass, or say, hey, I need to hear some more treble, and you just crank up the high end on your entire track, you're doing it for everything. Everything is getting the same treatment, and that kind of goes against the convention of mixing. Mixing is all about going in and individually taking care of each instrument, as I mentioned earlier, with the panning, and then you have the dynamics, maybe push this instrument down, and then finally with the EQ. All of these things combined will take your music to a completely different dimension. Now, EQ and all these other things, they're subjective. It's a matter of opinion. But again, if you can go out and do a bit of research on these areas, you'll start to understand the thought process as to why people do certain things. Some of these studio engineers, they don't just crank up the bass on their electronic track. There's some logic behind what do they pump up in terms of the EQ. Let's say there's an 808 and a bass line. Well, they're both maybe in the same general range. How do you create distinction between your kick and your bass? If you can start to uncover these types of answers, your mix will sound phenomenal. You'll be able to hear every instrument, but everything is banging, everything is alive, everything is full. So it's really worth you putting some effort into. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up our episode today with a bonus tip. And this bonus tip is about what you say to people. If I were you, stop telling people you're recording in your home studio. Quick story. Many years ago, when I was just first getting started, I reached out to a major television production company, if you want to call it that, or a channel, if you will. Everyone, for the most part, in our audience and even globally, will know who this particular broadcaster is. I reached out to them a while back offering some of my music. One of the head producers there, they heard my music, they saw my stuff, and they said, Walt, we can't afford you. And I'm like, you can't afford me? And at the time I was struggling, just trying to start my music company. I'm like, dude, yeah, you can afford me. But they heard my music. They saw the presentation of my stuff, and they assumed that I was working out some multi-cajillion-dollar studio. Wasn't true. At the time, I was working out of my apartment. But the music quality was so amazing in their ears, they thought I was working in, again, some super high-end studio, and they felt that I would just be way too expensive. That's a credit to my ability to mix my music in a way that sounds amazing. So my point being is that stop telling people you're recording out of your home studio. Put your music out there. See what people say. See what kind of feedback you get on the sound of your music. That will be the gauge for you as to whether or not you're getting sweeter with some of the things that I mentioned in the previous tip, with the mixing specifically. All right, so that's all we have for today. Check us out on the next episode. And if you want to check out all of the episodes or browse through the things that we've talked about before, make sure you go over to successwithmusic.com. Again, our website is successwithmusic.com. There you can actually send us an email and ask questions. We most certainly will put it on air for you. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check us on the next episode.
$10 of gas won't fill the tank. No, this just gets old. I know there's gotta be a better way for me in this life that is